You can't begin to comprehend how many times I've seen discussions, threads, tweets on why X champion should be in a different class. Not even that, there have been videos made on topic 2 that have suggested things like adding a new class or breaking down classes even more so there are multiple types of supports and flanks. While there's nothing wrong with these suggestions, it's not exactly needed. The thing is, classes mean very little in this game. It's a way to simplify an already complicated game, and while that is a good thing in general, sometimes people take it too seriously. Let's begin with the class themselves. Let's, really think about what the classes mean on a broader sense. Starting with our frontliners, also known as tanks, most of the time when people think of tanks, the thing that immediately pop up are point sitting and shielding. Well, they're not exactly wrong. It's not what tanks are really supposed to do. Ask yourself this. Why do tanks have shields in the first place? And also, why are tanks traditionally associated with a high health pool? That's because tanks are the performers in the game. What I mean by this is that tanks are supposed to be the main attraction in the game. Tanks redirect enemy attacks or attention towards themselves in order to protect other characters. Now, coming back to our initial thinking on tanks, why should tanks be on one point sitting when they're much better suited to zone the enemy teams? They have the health pool for it, and frankly they can do it better than flanks or damage ever can. This misunderstanding doesn't just apply to frontliners. All of the classes are misunderstood by a large portion of the player base. Next in line we have the DPS. For those who don't know what DPS means, it's basically damage per second. This is one of the most popular classes, if not the most popular. Again, the thing that's attributed most to the DPS class is that you carry your team to victory, get the most kills, and basically be the superstar in any given game. I mean, why else would you be so good at dishing out damage? You see, that's it. As the name implies, you're a damage character. Your job is to dish out damage consistently. And that's the key word here, consistency. Every second you're alive and not dishing out damage, you're not doing your job properly. You must have been in games where people basically complain in your team that your team composition doesn't have enough damage. In simpler terms, you are a support character. But whereas support helps the team with healing, damage does the same thing with, damage. This now brings us to one of the most complex classes in the game, support. I don't even think I need to mention this, but there is a lot more to being support than a singular heal value at the end of the game. Healing is a big part of their kit. Yes, but it's not the only part in the kit. Whatever the other classes can do, the supports can do just as well, but maybe not as good. Supports can zone, provide distractions, damage mitigation, setting up those combos, finishing off the low targets, and frankly, babysit the team. And finally, we have the flankers. Contrary to belief, their job is not as complicated as you might think. It can be summed up with one simple picture. Yeah, believe it or not, that is your job. You are the janitor in your team. You clean up after your team after they do the main work, chase the low health targets, and essentially finish the job. Your job is not to distract someone. Hell, you want to be undetected for most of the time. Your health pool is low as hell, which means even if someone sneezes on you, you've lost half of your health. No, but seriously, your job is to clean up, no matter how you justify it. Having explained what all the classes do, now it's time to completely throw out all of the things out the window. And you can thank Hi-Rez for this, for their initial game design. Most of you should know this by now, but for those who don't, Paladins was more about cards than champions, as it currently is. What this meant as game design was that the skills were a canvas, and then the cards were the paint. Combining them together would make your paintings of your own battle. What this also meant for every champion was that they had the same skill patterns. What I mean by this is each champion will have 2 champion abilities, 1 movement ability, and after the chicken patch, which was CB12, 1 ultimate and 1 alternate fire. While there are some champions now that have broken this mold, Inara with no movement ability, Ruckus with no alternate fire, that doesn't mean the rules still can't be applied. So put this together, a game with a change in direction, but not the mechanics, plus every champion having the same skill patterns, plus a much more refined game. This gives birth to class dissolvency. There is little to nothing that separates the classes, but instead of ranting on about how we should make this gap a lot more thicker and defined, Enjoy the fact that it's thinner and a lot more vague. It's due to this dissolvency that gave birth to Flank Nando, Damage Grover, and believe it or not, Support Maeve as well, which is just as much disgusting as it sounds. It's the thin line that makes this simple looking game a lot more complex the more you decide to research into it. You're constantly asking yourself, would this work, or wouldn't it be cool if this happened? Also thanks to the card system, which isn't nearly as customizable as it was once, but you know, the legend system does help it with a fair bit. It's now possible to play tanks as flankers, supports like DPS as a support, and believe it or not, flanks as tank if you so desire. It also goes without saying that you need to have a pretty good grasp at the game before you try this. You can't go in day one and expect things like Flank Nando to work. Maybe this is why classes are in a game. It's a good introduction into what a specific class can do. So you know, enjoy this moment. Not every game has the luxury, nor is it possible to try out these things all the time. Coming back to the starting in the video on how certain champions are in the wrong class. It's not a mistake, and nor was it accidental. It's a way to open up players into playstyles they might have not considered before, and frankly, it's one of the best things this game does. Break the established boundaries and test them every single minute.